So Rebecca Solnit's an author that I really love, and her quote is, hope isn't like a lottery ticket that you sit on the sofa and clutch. It's the axe you use to break down the door with in an emergency. And I love that because it's like, you hope the other person's alive on the other side of the door, right? Like that's why anyway. So I always think about that one. I love that one. So when I think about climate change, I think about 30 by 30. It's like, that's our axe. We believe we can get somewhere, so we got to keep going.
Welcome, Jen. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Thanks, Daniel. Nice to see you.
I'd love to start by finding out what you were doing 10 years ago.
Just about this time 10 years ago, I was thinking about applying to getting in the mode of starting to run my first office. So I was about to step into a really big leadership role, running the Sacramento field office for the first time. And I was pretty nervous.
I imagine some things have changed since then. So what are you doing now?
Now I'm the Deputy Secretary for Biodiversity and Habitat at the California Natural Resources Agency.
Okay, so with that big leap from the nervousness from before, and now you've been 10 years building up to being the leader you are now, talk about what's been going on in the field. What's been the changes you've seen? What's changed the most over this whole decade?
I really feel like what's changed is the issues have become more urgent. The scope of the problem is more obvious and really present for everyone, much more. You see it in the news more. You see biodiversity and conservation as a big deal on front pages of newspapers, which we didn't see before. But that comes from the fact that we have a really big problem and we're not making progress nearly fast enough. So it's a good and a bad.
Could you name that problem for me? Well, what's that problem for you?
Fundamentally, the problem is that the life support systems on Earth are breaking down. And climate change is one good example of that, but the biodiversity crisis is the related corollary in that, all of the species on Earth that are here are part of what makes this planet livable. And as we lose them, we're putting ourselves at risk.
Well, I think this is a perfect transition then to my next question. What is one thing you wish organizations in your field did more of today?
I wish people were better at communicating the problem, but also communicating what's possible and focusing on hope. I think it's really easy to get mired down in what's dark and depressing, and there's plenty of that. But I think to keep momentum, we need to focus in a forward-looking way on what's possible, and keep our eye on the prize and be really purpose-driven and focused about what we can get done.
How do you stay hopeful in your work?
Some days it's hard. But I mean, as you know, I'm working on 30 by 30, which is this global initiative. And what I love about it is it gives people a sense of being part of a collective global effort. So, there was that old, I think it's from the 70s, think globally, act locally. But 30 by 30 actually makes you feel that global connection. So the thing you're doing in your backyard is actually part of this larger effort, and we can see ourselves making progress together. And I think that's really hopeful.
All right, well, enough positivity from us then. So let's talk about the challenges. What is the biggest challenge in your field that you see?
That humans have a short attention span. And so we focus on the problem of the day, and then the next thing happens. There's a war in Ukraine. There's rising gas prices. There's, people need to put food on the table. There's all these immediate concerns that prevent us from thinking about the longer term. And I think that's just the limitation of the human mind. And that's a real challenge, I think, is how to navigate all that.
All right. So tell me, how do we navigate all that? Solve that for me.
I don't have it. I don't know. I mean, we can't give up, right? We don't want to just say, well, forget it. It doesn't matter, because it does matter. And we need to keep working on these problems. And so I think you meet people where they are and you try to give them something tangible that they can do to help actually move the needle. And that's, at the end of the day, I think what we're trying to do here in my role, what I'm trying to do.
It strikes me, I think you do this a lot by building these pretty big, diverse coalitions of people and a lot of different diverse relationships with different stakeholders, which is pretty rare. And it's pretty rare that someone else would have the opportunity to do that at the stage they are in their career. But I think a lot of people are thinking about that in their future. So can you talk a little bit about what you need to bring to be able to do that as effectively as I've seen you do it right now?
Yeah, I mean, one of my mantras is that all environmental problems are actually people problems, right? And, we've created these problems, we're going to get ourselves out of this mess, but we have to work together. And so my point about meeting people where they are, I think that's really important. You want to try to understand where someone's coming from, what are the challenges they face, what are their values, who do they represent? You don't just come in and tell them what they should do. You try to build that relationship and build that, where do we have common ground and what can we take of that nugget to move forward together.
Well, this may be a bit repetitive then, but maybe not. Tell me about yourself as a leader then and what you've learned along the way that you wish you could impart to someone else or that you wish someone else understood.
I've thought a lot about leadership over the years and, mistakes I've made, things I think that work. What I think is just, for me, fundamentally important about the way I try to live my life is that, trust is at the core. People have to believe that when you say something, you mean it. You try to not hide your agenda, be as open and honest with people as you can. That can be my downfall because I can be a little too direct and a little too blunt sometimes, but I think that it's a measure of sort of my commitment to connecting with people is that I think we should try not to hide behind, words that don't mean things. We should really try to get in and build relationships and build that trust. And I think the way you do that is what I said, trying to understand people and let them understand you.
I really appreciate that you sort of frame leadership as an ongoing leadership journey. And so thinking about young leaders just getting started, what advice do you give maybe? I imagine you actually give advice to young leaders regularly. What is one of those gem pearls of wisdoms you might offer someone in that situation?
I actually mentor a lot of young women in particular, because I think we've still to this day, been trained to believe that we don't deserve a seat at the table. And so I really try to encourage people to see themselves, understand their role, but also not shortchange their abilities. And so step up, speak out, look for opportunities to really dig in. And one of my main ones is when someone offers you an opportunity that you think you can't handle, don't shy away, go for it.
Thank you. I'm not a young woman, but that is still something I am learning to do. The imposter syndrome is real. And
yeah, it's real for all of us, even deputy secretaries, you just have to. So if somebody else thinks you can do it, you probably can. And the other thing too, is that everything that we do in this world and everything that's going on is done by a person. And that person, lies awake at 2 o'clock in the morning and doesn't remember if they, paid their bills. Like people, we're all just human beings on the inside. And so don't think that people are in these super powerful positions. They're any different from you. We're all just people doing our jobs, doing our best. And so there's not like a special class of people for leaders. We can all be leaders.
Thank you. Well, then let's look to that future for a second, where maybe some of these people who aren't proclaimed to be leaders now, but have those leader qualities will be our leaders. What's going to be different in your field 10 years from now?
Oh gosh, I really hope that we have cracked the nut on bringing down global carbon emissions. So this is, I don't know if it's a prediction, but it's a sincere hope that we have figured out how to do this globally and really turn the tide on climate change. Because if we haven't, I think we're going to be in crisis mode a lot more than we already are.
I imagine also we'll have conserved 30% of California, maybe.
Oh yeah, obviously. In 10 years, in eight, right, 2030.
And on that note, you will hopefully have reached that ambitious goal and maybe done some work and involved others and passed it on to future leaders in some way for the state to continue to be able to do this work. So where will you, Jen Norris, be 10 years from now?
I really can't answer that question. I have no idea. I think it'll be something exciting. It'll be something challenging. I tend not to look too far ahead. I just focus on what I'm doing now and try to be as effective as I can be. We'll see.
Well, thank you, Jen. I want to end, I turn the tables here for a second and actually give you a chance to ask a question of others. What's an interesting question that you have for others in your field that you don't currently know the answer to?
Well, I'm interested in the question you asked me. I want to know what gives people hope. I want to know what's the thing that keeps them going every day. I'd be really interested to hear that.
Okay, Jen Norris, thank you so much for meeting with Potrero Group.
Thanks, Daniel.